sales on every purchase every day.
A picture of an Australian teen measuring his foot-long sub went viral this week. Matt Corby posted this photo of his Subway sandwich next to a tape measure on Facebook. As you can see, it is 11 inches, not the 12 that a foot-long name would imply. Now, this story even made the front page of a newspaper here in New York, and it led Subway to issue a statement saying the name footlong is, quote, a descriptive name for the sub sold in Subway restaurants and not intended to be a measurement of length. That explanation is a little tough to swallow, so we decided to investigate. We ordered a couple of footlongs from Subway today and called in producer Bob Hand to measure the foot. Appropriate, right? Hand is a big fan of Subway and approached the job very seriously. This is what he found. His Veggie Delight on white was more than 12 inches, almost 13. The meat one, though, did also on white. I don't know why that is relevant, but it's in here. Did not quite make it, unless you included the meat hanging over the side. So apparently it is true that not all of their sandwiches add up. Which brings me to tonight's number. $5 million. That is the amount a Chicago man is suing Subway for. Nguyen Baran alleges he ordered a footlong at Subway, but only got 11 inches, and that it is part of a pattern of fraudulent, deceptive, and otherwise improper advertising. And on the day he filed his lawsuit, 2 other men in New Jersey sued Subway for the same thing. And today, the 3 say they are considering joining forces and filing a huge federal class action lawsuit. Look, if something is called a footlong, you do expect it to be a footlong. I'll give you that. But there's another side to this. Americans, struggling with an obesity epidemic are suing because they want more. Class action lawsuit by the World Style Nation because they deserve a little more food. The problem we have 11 inches, not 12, is 52 inches you did not eat in a year. Now that adds up. Or rather, slips down. And so on this one, we begrudgingly though, wow, side with Subway. Anderson Cooper, 360, starts now.
Aaron, thanks. Good evening, everyone. A truly remarkable story tonight. It could have been another Newtown, Connecticut. A confessed teenage killer bent investigators say on committing a massacre. Instead, he stopped short, which is where our story begins tonight. We'll explain ahead. And later, how Manti Te'o explained to the girlfriend who never was in his statements about her, even after he knew she was fictitious. You might have seen the interview today. We'll speak to a pair of reporters, Jeremy Schaap, who also talked to Manti, and Timothy Burke, who first broke the story. We begin, though, as we do every night, keeping them honest, looking for facts, not trying to offer opinions or playing favorites, not supporting Democrats or Republicans. You can find that elsewhere. Just looking at reporting, real reporting, looking for the truth, calling out hypocrisy. So tonight, how politicians who oppose women serving in combat reconcile their position with the facts about women serving in combat. You can hear for yourself and you can decide for yourself. Today, Defense Secretary Leon Panetta announced the military will let women serve in frontline combat units, including infantry, armor, artillery, even potentially special forces.
Our nation was built on the premise of the citizen soldier. In our democracy, I believe it is the responsibility of every citizen to protect the nation.
Well, the policy came together after more than a year's effort by Secretary Panetta and Joint Chiefs Chairman Martin Dempsey, with the heads of each service signing off. The branches will have until May to submit plans for integrating women. They'll also be able to make the case that certain specialties should not be open to women, special forces, for instance. Now, early reaction was mixed. Ryan Smith, a retired Marine infantryman, said that men and women side by side in combat would be distracting, awkward, and harmful to unit cohesion.
Combat's a very hard game, and I think people are being awfully cavalier about this restriction being lifted. Combat's a life or death game, and if we get this wrong, the loser dies.
Republican Senator James Inhofe sounded alarm bells as well, warning that Congress might have to put the brakes on the idea. And social conservative groups such as the Family Research Council also weighed in against the idea. The FRC asking on its homepage tonight, how much national security is our president willing to forego to promote this kind of progressive feminism? Keep in mind, though, not every conservative feels this way. House Armed Services Chairman Buck McKeon, for one, said he welcomed today's announcement. In addition, people on both sides of the aisle acknowledge that the idea of women in combat is totally normal if you speak German or Hebrew, Dutch, French, Finnish, or Polish. The armed forces in all those countries, plus Canada, Australia, Romania, Norway, and Sweden, allow women in combat units. In addition, there's the inescapable fact that in modern warfare, the front line can be blurry, meaning troops in nominally non-combat roles can wind up in combat.
In fact, in 2003, when I got to Baghdad as the commander of 1st Armored Division, my first foray out of the Ford operating base, I hopped into the up-armored Humvee, and I asked the driver, who he was, where he was from, and I slapped the turret gunner on the leg, and I said, "Who are you?" And she leaned down and said, "I'm Amanda." And I said, "Oh, okay."
And or Tammy, Lieutenant Colonel Tammy Duckworth, lost her legs from RPG fire piloting a Black Hawk chopper in Iraq. The now Congresswoman Duckworth looks at today's decision and sees it as part of a long tradition of reform and resistance.
There was study after study after study during World War II before we allowed African Americans to fly airplanes because people thought that African Americans did not have the mental capacity to fly aircraft. Yet look at the heroism of the Tuskegee Airmen who never lost a bomber aircraft that they were escorting.
Well, plenty of African Americans died in the Second World War. Certainly, women have paid the ultimate price in Iraq and Afghanistan as well. 100 killed, hundreds more wounded. To some, that is reason to bring women officially into combat roles and allow them the opportunity for command promotions that only combat experience in some cases can deliver. And for others, the idea of women dying in battle is a big reason for keeping them off the battlefield in the first place. I'm joined now by former Congressman Allen West. He's an Iraq War combat veteran, also retired Canadian Army General Rick Hillier joins me. Canadian women have been serving in combat roles since 1989, and the general is the author of a book called A Soldier First, Bullets, Bureaucrats, and the Politics of War. So, Congressman West, you completely disagree with this decision. I want to play you something that Senator John McCain, obviously a respected military veteran, had to say when asked about this decision. Let's listen.
I think it's the right thing to do. I support it. I just wanted us all to make sure that the standards, particularly the physical standards, are met so that the combat efficiency of the units are not degraded. But it's time to do that. Women have proven their enormous contributions they've made in Iraq and Afghanistan.
So, Congressman West, do you believe he's wrong?
I disagree with him. I think, my recent experiences in Desert Shield, Desert Storm, Iraq, and Afghanistan, I think first and foremost, you need to get the standards correct and make sure we don't have that loss in the quality of our combat units on the front lines. And I've been the first to admit that you have women that are serving in combat zones, and therefore when you lead a forward operating base, anyone is in combat. But I think that when you're talking about going into some of these units, now you're talking about something different. We have to make sure that we have all the right policies and procedures that are in place, and I think we just put the cart before the horse instead of allowing this to matriculate in the right, correct fashion, I guess.
But this isn't happening overnight. In fact, it's going to take years, and each of these units, a specialized unit like the SEALs, for instance, can make the case why women should not serve in that unit. Is that not good enough?
Well, let's be very honest. When you have done this political announcement, it's going to be very hard for someone to come back and objectively say that we stand against this. I mean, you put the pressure on people in the opposite direction. So I wish we had gone to the specialized units. We had done the right type of study with the infantry units. And as a matter of fact, I believe just recently, we had 2 females that were involved in Marine Corps infantry basic training, officer basic training, and they did not meet the standard. They didn't pass. Now, I'm not trying to say that there aren't exceptions to the rule, but I think before we make a major policy shift to change like this, we should really get down to the grassroots in some of these units and see how well that's going to work and what would be the problems with the implementation.
General Hillier, Canada opened frontline combat units roles to women back in 1989. You were involved in that process. In your experience, was it the right move, not only in terms of equality, but also in terms of military readiness?
Anderson, it was. It was absolutely the right move. First of all, we increased our recruiting pool by 50, 100%, because now women could join all the roles in the Canadian Armed Forces. And secondly, it just made them equal in our society completely. They now could serve our country in the toughest of roles that they had. What we found was this. All we said was that we are going to make sure our standards, our physical standards, our mental standards, and our ethical standards remain high. And in fact, we actually increase them. And if you can meet those standards, you can do any job in the Canadian Forces, and that's where we've gone over this last 20 years.
But did women have a different standard? Sorry, did women have a different standard than men in terms of, doing the same number of push-ups or pull-ups?
Absolutely not, Anderson. One of the first things we had to realize is we wanted to ensure that we had fit soldiers who could carry heavy loads because they are a beast of burden on a battlefield. We could get in position, bring fire on an enemy, and fight and win against that enemy. And so what we started to say was, here are our standards. We want them very high. Now, how are we measuring those standards? And one of the things we looked at was that our physical fitness measurements were often prejudiced towards men. Push-ups being a perfect case in point. And I used to say, I never met a Taliban commander who was frightened of somebody doing push-ups. What they were frightened of were fit soldiers, professional, well-equipped, that could take the fight to them and win it. And women don't do push-ups well. So we started measuring our fitness in a different way. We found our standards, Anderson, actually increased.
Congressman West, does that concern you when you hear Canada kind of change their standards or just measure them in a different way?
Well, that does concern me. Having been in the military myself for 22 years, when you look at the Army physical fitness training standards, there is a difference between the requirements for a male and female soldier at whatever different age group. And then you just got to equal that out. I mean, we can't adjust standards or say that the push-up is really not going to be a fair measurement, so we're going to change the measurement. And that's the concern that I think we have to have as we move down the road. Look, Anderson, the big concern we should have right now, we kicked the can on sequestration. Sequestration is going to hit in March. That means 200,000 Army soldiers and Marines are going to be put out. You're going to have a lessening of naval vessels. You're going to have 9 less fighter tactical squadrons in the Air Force. We just saw in Algeria a horrific attack by radical Islamists who were being trained by special forces in Mali, some of them, and they defected over. But we had 3 Americans be lost. I think that's where our focus should be right now, the declining situation in the Middle East, sequestration, and not so much this, I guess, foray into an equality trip. And I would have to tell you that, look, I have to tell you, if this be the case, then why do we have separate hockey leagues? Women should be out there playing ice hockey with the guys in the NHL. We should not have a WNBA. I can't shoot a three-pointer, but there are ladies out there who can certainly take me to the hoop. So maybe they should be competing with Kobe Bryant.
General, let me ask you, was there ever cases where having women in combat roles you felt improved the situation? I mean, I think about going to a village, say in Afghanistan, where men may have a problem talking to women. Is there a plus in your mind, General?
I think there are many pluses, Anderson, but let me just come back to the question I answered earlier. We didn't change our standard. We just went back and made sure we were measuring the standards that we wanted, as opposed to doing something that we were doing simply because we've done it for centuries, like push-ups, for example.
So instead of push-ups, it was carrying a pack or something.
Hey, well, it was carrying, the soldiers carried an average of 100 pounds on operations in Afghanistan. We made sure they could carry that weight for a long period of time. They could carry their weapons, and when they were finished that long period of time, they could carry a buddy on their back, man or woman of their rough size, because they might be injured or wounded, and they could dig a trench, and they could scale a wall, and they could bring the fight to the enemy after all of that in a high-temperature, harsh climate. That's the kind of fitness that we wanted, and that's what we got from all of our soldiers, male or female. In actual combat operations, we found many pluses. Just simply out in villages amongst the population of Afghanistan, our male soldiers simply could not speak to the females that were in the area. You simply cannot do that. Our female soldiers could talk to them, could obtain all kinds of information, sometimes very actionable intelligence, actually disseminate our own messages themselves, start to build a rapport with the people that we were there to help, and they could do things that male soldiers simply could not do simply because they were female, and at the same time, they could do everything else that we asked, and there were many pluses.
Congressman West, even though this came after a year-long study by the Joint Chiefs, and each head of the Joint Chiefs, each member of the Joint Chiefs signed off on this, you believe this is about politics?
Well, let's be very honest, when you're at that level of 3- and 4-star general, that's a political point. But one of the things I want to bring in, as a battalion commander in Iraq in 2003, I had 2 females that were detailed to my unit as interrogators. Now, I will also tell you there was very difficulty for them to talk to males in that scenario, but yes, we took them on raids, and they were very helpful when we had to deal with females who may be in a compound. So you have female soldiers that are attached to infantry or armor or artillery units, but what we're talking about now is from boot camp all the way through, inculcating them into these combat type of units. And I don't know if we've thought through the 2nd, 3rd, maybe 4th order effects. Let's consider back in 2001 when the Special Forces A-Team went in and was working with the Northern Alliance, and they were on horseback. Are we ready to see those females who would go in, even if they met the qualities and the standards, would they be accepted in that type of cultural scenario? Those are the type of things we have to think through.
General Hillier, but looking back from 1989, you have no doubt this should be done.
Anderson, no doubt whatsoever. We had all of those same concerns, but the reality is, and I saw this myself, and I got it firsthand from men and women involved in combat operations, when they were fully involved from boot camp onwards, as the congressman said, there really was no difference. We produced cohesive combat units that could do the missions that we wanted successfully, and they could mostly do them better because there were men and women involved. We simply wanted to serve our country and do great things as Canadians, and for us, it was one of the most incredible things that we could have ever done. Absolutely right, absolutely positive.
All right, I appreciate both your perspectives, General Hillier and Congressman Webb. Thank you very much. Good discussion. Follow me on Twitter. Let me know what you think on Twitter. Let's talk about it right now. @Anderson Cooper. Coming up next, how another Newtown massacre might have been but wasn't, and how investigators say an alleged teenage killer stopped short of something even worse. You'll meet the man who confronted him. And later, how doctors made sure a little baby's heart, this is extraordinary, a little baby, she was born with her heart beating outside her body. The heart is now back in place and she is home. A miraculous story. We'll explain it.
What happens when you take something great and sharpen it? Awesome. How about when you take the leader in business security and give it more edge than ever before? Denied. Well, ADT Business Solutions is now Tyco Integrated Security. World-class monitoring centers, thousands of qualified technicians, and a personal passion for helping you protect your business. And we'll help create security solutions customized just for you. That's sharper. We are Tyco Integrated Security, and we are sharper. Look like the baby searching all the world around. Look like the baby searching all the world around. I jumped on but they didn't know what space was about. Like a glove. I find so fast just to rent the food night and day.
What's it take to make America run? Lots of hard-working Americans creating the fuels for nearly 250 million vehicles at the world's most advanced refineries. About 170,000 miles of secure pipelines many of us never see. It's the world's largest energy infrastructure. Billions of investments in America, safely providing the fuels we need to power businesses, heat our homes, and keep America on the move. Log on to learn more.
Excuse me, sir. I'm gonna have to ask you to power down your little word game. I think your friends will understand.
Oh, no, it's actually my Geico app. See, I just paid my bill.
Did you really? From the plane?
Yeah, I can manage my policy, get roadside assistance, pretty much access Geico 24/7.
Sounds a little too good to be true, sir. I'll let that one pick slide.
Okay, did she seriously just say that?
Geico. Just a click away with our free mobile app. Time and sales data. Split-second stats. It's so close to the options for. You'll bust your brain box. All on Thinkorswim. From TD Ameritrade.
Looks like you're in a pickle. Yeah. Can you get me out of it? Just an appetite, never check.
Book any flight and hotel together and get access to a free personal concierge service. Any need, any question. We're on call 24/7.
In World Politics tonight, avoiding the gun debate with a motivation you might not know about. You might assume that California Democratic Senator Dianne Feinstein favors strict gun control measures because she's a California Democrat representing a fairly liberal constituency. But Senator Feinstein, who today introduced legislation banning more than 150 types of assault weapons, is also the former mayor of San Francisco. She came to office as the direct result of a notorious shooting, an assassination. The story now from Chief Congressional Correspondent Dana Bash.
For Dianne Feinstein, it's personal.
I became mayor as a product of assassination.
Both Mayor Moscone and Supervisor Harvey Milk have been shot and killed.
The death of her colleagues, including Harvey Milk, the first openly gay public official in America, was so traumatic she rarely discusses it.
You were somebody who was very close to a tragic shooting.
But here, at the launch of her push to renew the assault weapons ban, she answered in graphic detail.
I was the one that found Supervisor Milk's body, and I was the one that put a finger in a bullet hole trying to get a pulse. Once you have been through one of these episodes, once you see what the crime scene is like, it isn't like the movies. It changes your view of weapons.
She put on an elaborate event, even getting special permission from DC and Capitol Police to display 10 different types of assault weapons, including an AR-15, the kind of rifle the shooter used to murder children in Newtown.
Assault weapons were designed for and should be used on our battlefields, not on our streets.
The proposed legislation would prohibit the sale, manufacture, transfer, and importation of more than 150 assault-style weapons, and ban large-capacity magazines with more than 10 rounds of ammunition. But to appeal to gun owners, it excludes or keeps legal most handguns and 2,200 hunting and sporting rifles.
How are you gonna go hunting with something like that? You kill something, there's nothing left to eat.
Also here, family members and victims of gun massacres across the country. Lily Haptu was shot in German class at Virginia Tech.
I have a bullet still in my head. I was shot in the jaw. It's 1 inch, it's 1 millimeter away from my brainstem.
Still, Feinstein is realistic about the slim chance this assault weapons ban has of passing.
If anyone asks today, can you win this? The answer is, we don't know. It's so uphill.
But pushing gun control is now a White House campaign-style effort, and Vice President Joe Biden held a social media town hall, a Google Hangout, to rally support.
Make your voices heard. This outfit, this town's listens when people rise up and speak.
The White House and Feinstein know their biggest hurdle is convincing skeptical fellow Democrats from gun rights states to support gun control.
The message to Democrats is see what your silence does. There will be more of these.
Dana Bash joins me now. Dana, you've been talking to red state Democrats, including some who've gotten NRA support in the past. Have any of them told you they'll support this legislation?
Not one, Anderson. The dynamic here is that there are more than half a dozen Democrats from those red states up for re-election next year, and they really feel that this is something that they don't want to touch with a 10-foot pole. Then more broadly, there are about a dozen conservative Democrats, or at least Democrats from conservative states, who also just are highly skeptical of the idea of supporting this. And if you look at what the NRA said today, it gives you an example of why. I'll read you part of their statement, Anderson. They said, the American people know gun bans do not work, and we are confident Congress will reject Senator Feinstein's wrong-headed approach. Now, Anderson, of all of the proposals the president announced earlier this month, it seems that background checks, at least some form of strengthening them, has the best chance of passing. But privately, even Democrats I talked to who support gun control say that's an uphill climb. The way one senior Democratic source put it, I think it really explains the political dynamite here. He said, Democrats simply don't do well in gunfights. Anderson.
All right, Dana, thanks very much. This next story is no less remarkable. To be sure, it's about a terrible tragedy, a family murdered in Albuquerque, New Mexico. You may have remembered hearing about this, but it's also about how those killings might have been the prelude to a killing rampage. They might have, but they weren't. And looking back on it, you have to wonder whether all the talk in Washington, all the politicking, could have prevented any of it. So what did stop this alleged killer? Kim Lobb tells us what happened in that crucial space between something bad and something so much worse.
Do you feel that this place, this church that you love, came pretty darn close to becoming Newtown?
Absolutely. 101%. Absolutely.
Vince Harrison was staring at the gunman, 15-year-old Nehemiah Griego, who early Saturday morning, according to detectives, had just massacred his entire family and planned to continue killing until the police killed him. Oddly enough, the former Albuquerque police officer was actually leading a drill on what to do when a shooter is loose in a church, and he came face to face with the reality.
Thinking about it, this send chills up my spine. I'm not sure if he came here for help. This is what he knew. This was his life away from his home.
A home life that was hard, according to neighbors who said the shooter's father, Greg Griego, practiced tough love.
I think he was a tyrant, and the kids under that type of pressure, I didn't see any sign of love among those people.
The heartbreaking details of what happened in the Griego home start with young Nehemiah arguing with his mother, according to detectives, who say when she went to sleep, the 15-year-old took his father's .22 caliber rifle and shot her in the head. That woke up his brother. Investigators say Griego lifted his dead mother's head and showed it to 9-year-old Zephania before killing him as well. Investigators say his 5-year-old sister JL, youngest member of the family, 2-year-old Angelina, were next. At this point, the investigators say Griego changed weapons and waited hours until his father, Greg, came home. Detectives say the one-time gang member and now pastor was shot in the back and killed with his own AR-15.
Investigators believe the boy wasn't done yet, saying he reloaded the AR-15 and the .22 caliber rifle and put them with more ammo into the family minivan. Investigators say he wanted to come to this Walmart. Why? According to the criminal complaint, to murder more people in a populated area and then die in a gunfight with police. But for some reason, the teen changed his mind and instead drove to his family's church. Griego left the guns in the van. Spent the day like an average teenager, hanging out with his girlfriend at the church's skate park, the basketball courts, and bookstore. The first sign of trouble at the church was when Pastor Justin Marbury was told by a parishioner something was wrong with Griego's family. So he asked the 15-year-old if he knew anything.
What he was saying was, my family's dead.
Griego told the pastor and Vince Harrison he had actually been home and discovered his dead family, but for some reason did not call police.
Just so it was real quiet and cold and a matter of fact. And the red flags started going up.
Harrison and the pastor decided to take Griego to his house to see if the story was true. A mile from the house, Harrison felt something he hadn't since his days as a homicide cop.
Something evil was not right. It felt like a darkness.
He pulled over and got out of the car so Griego couldn't hear him call 911. Sheriff's deputies met them at the house. They used Griego's key and found the bodies. Deputies arrested the teen quietly. Authorities say he eventually confessed and told officers he started his killing spree because he was angry with his mother. Griego seemed disconnected, say officers, only getting excited when he talked about his love of violent video games. A stunning turn for his church community, who saw the youngster grow up as a normal child until the day of the murders.
Part of what I do as a pastor is I'm watching out for the church, for the people here, and part of that is paying attention.
Do you think paying attention made a difference here?
I think taking it seriously and following through did.
The difference between a family tragedy and what could have been another Newtown. Kyung Law, CNN, Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Such an extraordinary story. The uncle of the alleged shooter was going to be on Piers Morgan tonight, so that should be a remarkable interview. Stick around for that. We also have a really amazing story next, an example of some of the extraordinary things that doctors can do today. A beautiful baby girl is home with her family tonight at this hour after beating tremendous odds. She was born with her heart outside her body. It's an incredibly rare birth defect. It's usually fatal. Doctors were able to save this little girl's life. Dr. Sanjay Gupta joins me ahead to explain. It's just incredible. Also later, Manti Te'o's first on-camera interview about his fake girlfriend. Katie Couric asked some tough questions, but did his answers actually pass the smell test? We'll explain that.
What if the next big thing isn't a thing at all? It's lots of things, all waking up. Becoming part of the global phenomenon we call the Internet of Everything. Trees will talk to networks, will talk to scientists about climate change. Cars will talk to road sensors, will talk to stoplights about traffic efficiency. The ambulance will talk to patient records, will talk to doctors about saving lives. It's going to be amazing and exciting, and maybe, most remarkably, not that far away. The next big thing, we're going to wake the world up and watch with eyes wide as it gets to work. Cisco, tomorrow starts here.
It was designed to escape the ordinary. It feels like it can escape gravity.
We now offer phone service as low as $1.70 a month with Magic Jack Plus. That's $19.95 a year. No computer needed. Nothing changes. And now keep your old phone number. That's right. Keep your old phone number. Get Magic Jack Plus at Radio Shack.
And now, the hard part. Piers Morgan talks guns, your money, and getting anything done with Frank Rich and Newt Gingrich. Tonight, live at 9 on CNN.
I had an arm loan, and when those 5 years came up, my interest rate started going up.
I never had any financial problems. Not only are you frustrated, you're embarrassed.
At one point in time, I was just gonna say, take the house. You know what I'm saying? It's not gonna matter to me.
That was a scary day when I got a phone, with that woman. And there's nothing we can do, blah, 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 see ya.
With the buying power of 1,000 stores, America's largest Tempur-Pedic elite retailer saves you big.
Tempur-Pedic savings event is going on now at Mattress Firm. Save up to $400 on Tempur Ergo models.
Visit the largest in-stock selection of Tempur-Pedic. Buy it today. Sleep on it tonight.
Interest-free financing will have you sleeping for less than $2 a night.
Come see why we're America's largest Tempur-Pedic elite retailer.
Mattress Firm, where it's easy to get a great night's sleep.
This is CNN.
Really incredible medical story tonight about an adorable 3-month-old baby who beat and is home from the hospital right now. Her name is Audrina Cardenas. She went home wearing what looks like a baby-sized body armor, which it basically is. It's to protect her tiny heart. It's going to make sense to you when you see this next video. It's kind of shocking, but it shows just why the story is so incredible. Take a look. This is what Audrina's heart looked like before she had surgery to fix it. It was partially outside of her body. She was born with this very rare birth defect where the heart or part of it forms outside of the body. Now, most babies with this defect do not survive, but doctors at Texas Children's Hospital were able to put Audrina's heart back into her chest. We wish her all the best of luck. Chief Medical Correspondent Dr. Sanjay Gupta joins me now. This story is incredible. This little girl. Have you ever seen a case like this?
Yeah, I have once back when I was in residency. It's a pretty rare thing, but there was a baby who was flown to the hospital where I was training and had this exact same sort of condition and got an operation.
I read this is like 8 out of 1 million babies have this problem. Is that true? Is that rare?
Yes, it is that rare, and there's a couple important points about that. Besides being rare, it also, there's not a lot of data. People always say, well, what caused it exactly? What's the exact right treatment? When you have numbers that small, Anderson, it's hard to come up with data that supports anything in particular. Also, of the babies that do have this, 90% of them actually don't survive more than 3 days after birth. So it is rare, and it's in most cases fatal.
To see that image where you basically see the heart beating. I understand they learned about the baby's condition when her mom was like 16 weeks pregnant. Could they do anything to help her while she was in utero?
No, there's not an in utero operation right now. They do certain operations, while the baby's still in the uterus, but not this one. The mother is essentially, given a choice, and you can imagine how difficult this must be. At 16 weeks, she's told, look, either you could terminate the pregnancy, you could do nothing and just provide comfort care after the baby's born, or you could, plan this very extensive operation involving several different types of surgical specialties and everything. So she opted for the third option. The odds were definitely stacked against her. But again, so far it looks like things are going well.
So she had open heart surgery the day after she was born. What does that entail? That's going to be so difficult.
Yeah, so with her particular case, and when you talk about ectopia cordis, again, this rare thing, the heart, it's outside the body. It can be outside the body, higher up, closer to the neck, closer to the chest here in the sternum area, or even lower down. What they essentially have to do is, what this is not a problem with the heart per se, but a problem with the outside of the body, the body wall, if you were. It just didn't develop properly, and in this case, about a third of the heart got stuck outside the body. So essentially you have to open up that area. They have to create room inside the chest cavity because the chest cavity may have become full, with the lungs and the rest of the heart, may not be enough room in there, and they have to essentially push the heart back in. And after that, they got to sort of close the skin over the heart, making sure it's not being compressed. It's a really remarkable operation. Cardiothoracic surgeons are involved. neonatologists, doctors take care of newborn babies, and also pediatric surgeons are involved. So it's, they say up to 80 different medical personnel were involved in the care of Audrina.
If she's gone home, is her heart now back inside her body and they've just put skin over it and the protective plate?
Yeah, her heart is back inside of her body. It's not, protected by the bone, the sternum that we're used to feeling here, but it just has the skin, which is why the protective armor's there. But in the long run, there will be something that will be more permanent placed there to protect her heart, to protect her lungs, all those internal organs.
But she'll always have that vulnerability unless she's wearing some sort of armor. They can't grow like a bone or something, or place a bone over it?
Yeah. No, it's similar. It's sort of a bone composite. Sometimes they'll use a combination of bone and something known as methyl methacrylate, which is almost a ceramic type thing. Right now she's growing, so if they were to do anything more permanent, she would essentially grow out of it. So at some point they're going to put something in that's going to, hopefully last her for the rest of her life. And she shouldn't have any other problems. A lot of these types of conditions, Anderson, are associated with other problems, liver problems, or some other problem going on in the body. This particular issue, usually if you solve this problem that we're talking about, and she survives the operation, which she has 3.5 months later now, she should do pretty well.
It's just incredible what doctors can do now. Sandra, thanks so much. We wish her the best, as I said. Just yet, Manti Te'o tries to explain why he missed all the red flags and screamed your dead girlfriend isn't real. To talking with Katie Couric, help her hurt his case. Two reporters, ESPN's Jeremy Shapman, talked with him last week, and Tim Burton broke the story way in ahead.
You know my heart for you.
I'm up next. But now I'm singing the heartburn blues. Hold on. Prilosec isn't for fast relief. Cue up Alka-Seltzer. It stops heartburn fast.
Oh, what a relief it is. Power your escape. With a car as alive as you are. Introducing instinctive all-wheel drive from Jaguar.
Man, returns are easy with free pickup from the U.S. Postal Service. We'll even drop off boxes if you need them. Visit USPS.com. Pay, print, and have it picked up for free any time of year.
Nice sweater. Thank you. There's a powerful new way to find a doctor.
Whoa, there are lots of doctors who can fix Mommy's knee.
It's called healthgrades.com.
But we want a girl doctor, right?
Profiles of virtually every doctor in America, from their education and training
She's board certified.
to their hospital's quality of care.
5-star rated for knee surgery. That's good to know.
Find your next doctor where 100 million people a year now find theirs. Healthgrades.com. How America finds a doctor.
And now, the hard part. Piers Morgan talks guns, your money, and getting anything done with Frank Rich and Newt Gingrich. Tonight, live at 9 on CNN.
Hello, I'm Ryan Erlacher, special defender. And once again, I'm here to protect you from DirecTV. Because now they're trying to sell you a free DVR upgrade that costs you up to $28 more a month.
That's a lot of cheese.
And DirecTV is still trying to lock you into a 2-year contract that could cost you over $2,800.
Not again.
That's why Xfinity from Comcast is the best call. You get advanced HD DVR service and all the latest shows with Xfinity On Demand. That's what I thought. Xfinity, the future of awesome.
For the first time, I'm 15, I was laid off from the job. In 2 seconds, I was getting behind on my mortgage. I found out about the Colorado foreclosure hotline through a friend. They figure out does it make sense to try to stay in the house? They give you the tools to empower yourself and to get informed so you can make the right decision. I would have not wanted to do this process without any kind of guidance, any more than you would want to do any kind of business transaction without some guidance.
This is CNN.
Well, the bizarre details of the Manti Te'o fake girlfriend hoax are seeping out bit by bit as we hear them. The story really only gets weirder. Diana Mura, the woman whose image was stolen to create an online identity for the fake girlfriend, Lene Kukua only learned that she was the face of the hoax, which lasted for years, last week. And when she got a call from a California man named Renaya Tuisasopo, here's what she told me.
He reached out to me a day or 2 days before the story broke and relayed to me that he in fact was stalking my profile for 5 years, taking my photos, and he created he created this identity that was not me.
And Tuisasopo, that's him in this picture, has not admitted publicly he was the mastermind of the hoax. Amira says he's apologized to her. As for Teo, Amira has never met him, though their names will probably be linked for a long time to come. But today, in his first on-camera interview, Teo told his version of the story to Katie Couric.
According to Manti Teo, he first met the person he thought was Lene Kukua over Facebook when he was a freshman in college. This is what he told Katie Couric.
I knew of her, and we'd speak as friends, ever since my freshman year. But it didn't start to pick up until my junior year. And it was just I didn't meet her, and I didn't see her in person, and she just seemed nice, and from the picture, she seemed, very beautiful.
A week ago, Teo told ESPN their casual friendship over Facebook escalated after the fictional Kukua told him her father died. They grew closer and would talk on the phone for hours, according to Teo, who provided Katie Couric with a voicemail from the girl he thought was Lene Kukua.
I'm just calling to say goodnight. I love you.
Teo says they tried multiple times to meet in person, but something always stopped them. But still, he says, he never suspected anything was wrong.
This Lene person, there's so many similarities. She was Polynesian, supposedly. She's Samoan, I'm Samoan. She loved her faith.
In April of 2012, Teo says he received a call, supposedly from Kukua's brother, telling him she was in a coma after a bad car accident. But still, he didn't visit her. They have supposedly been in a serious relationship now for about a year.
Why in the world wouldn't you go visit this girl in the hospital?
I ended up in San Diego, which was too far for me to go to the hospital. Then I fly to LA, and the layover time was too short.
The fictional Kukua said she recovered, and Teo says he jumped for joy when he heard the news. But in June, according to ESPN, Lene Kukua told him she had leukemia.
Well, either you're the most naive person on the planet, or this is the saddest story I think ever written. I mean, at this point, did you think to yourself, Manti, what? Are you kidding? Now she has leukemia? I mean, it goes on and on and on.
Yeah, I thought how could all this happen to one person?
3 months later, on September 12th, Teo was told his grandmother had died. And a few hours later, he got a phone call from someone who says he's Lene Kukua's brother.
He was crying and kept screaming, and he just said she's gone.
Teo then dedicated the rest of his football season to his grandmother and to Lene Kukua. His coaches shared his story with the media, which along with his stellar performance on the field made him a star. But then on December 6th, Teo received a phone call. The voice on the other end of the phone said it's Lene Kukua.
There was a long silent pause, and I was angry, just to say the least.
But you knew something was up at that point.
Yes.
Finally, you knew something was up.
Yes.
And then, even though the person he thought was Lene Kukua was alive, he still spoke publicly about her death 2 days later.
I lost both my grandparents and my girlfriend to cancer.
Those comments led many to believe Teo was in on the hoax. If he knew the person he thought was Kukua was alive, why did he say publicly she had died? Today, Teo told Couric he was simply overwhelmed.
This girl who I committed myself to died on September 12th. Now I get a phone call on December 6th saying that she's alive, and then I'm going to be put on national TV 2 days later, and they ask me about the same question. What would you do?
Well, ESPN's Jeremy Schaap did an off-camera interview with Teo last week, not long after the story broke. They talked for 2.5 hours. Many questions were asked. The only condition was no cameras. The audio was recorded, though. Jeremy Schaap joins me now. What did you think of his interview today? Did it pretty much jive with what he told you last week?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't see any separation between the story he was telling Katie and what he said today. When I use the term story, I don't mean to suggest that he's being untruthful.
You believe him? That he wasn't...
It's an uncomfortable position to be in as a reporter, as Anderson, when you're asked to vouch for somebody's believability.
I don't know whether he's telling the truth. I do know that I found him believable, and I think Katie has said the same.
Do you buy that? I now, Renaya Tuiasosopo's lawyer has come forward and said that it was Renaya's voice all along, pretending to be a girl, pretending to be the girlfriend, talking on the phone. Do you buy that?
Well, when I spoke to Manti Te'o a few days ago, he said that he believed Renaya Tuiasosopo was one of 3 people who was the voice of Lene Kekua.
So he thinks 3 different people.
He thought it was 3 different people, 2 men and 1 woman. So if Tuiasosopo's lawyer is saying it was just Tuiasosopo, that means either he's telling the truth or perhaps he's covering for 2 other people.
That he wants to take the fall for everybody to protect him.
Perhaps. And again, everything here is...
Katie Couric pressed him on leading people to believe that he'd met Lene in person. Let's listen to what he told her.
I wasn't as forthcoming about it, but I didn't lie. You know, I never was asked, did you see her in person? And so through the embarrassment and, you know, the fear of what people may think that I was committed to this person who I didn't have the chance to meet and she all of a sudden died, you know, that scared me. And so to avoid any further conversation, I kind of, you know, wasn't as forthcoming as I should have been.
I would say he didn't lie, it's sort of semantics, but he told you that it never occurred to him to go visit his dying girlfriend in the hospital when they were both in the same city. I found that really hard to believe.
Well, he said it was more complicated than that. I mean, there were arrangements made, there had been previous contacts and suggestions of meetings, she hadn't shown up. You know, it's also not the easiest thing in the world for a kid who's living in Hawaii over the summer, back in Indiana necessarily, to get to Southern California where he thought she was. But I think the big picture here, really, Anderson, it comes down to this. Either you believe that he was one of the perpetrators of this hoax, that he was behind it, and then the little lies don't matter. Right. Or you believe that he wasn't, and then the little lies, again, don't really matter, because he would be the victim, and he's simply saving face.
Although you could also argue that he did kind of realize this is helping him in his career, and so even if he thought, okay, maybe there's something weird here, he used this and he used the media to kind of propel this and perpetuate this idea that he loved this girl, even though now what he's saying is, well, you know, they never even met and they weren't that close.
But if you believe that, then, right. And I'm saying you can believe whatever you want, and people out there certainly are skeptical about this. If you believe that he perpetrated this hoax, then you necessarily believe that on September 12th, he finds out, which is a fact, that his grandmother died, someone very close to him, family's very tight-knit in the Samoan community, somebody he grew up with, and in the next few hours, he decides to orchestrate a scene in the Notre Dame locker room, where he kicks cans, he has to be consoled by teammates and coaches, and you have to say to yourself, at that moment in time, he did this to further, his candidacy for the Heisman Trophy? It's possible. I'm just saying, if you believe that he was behind this hoax, then you have to believe that in the hours after he found out his grandmother died, he also decided to stage a fake scene in the Notre Dame locker room.
Do you think this hurts him long term?
I don't think it hurts him long term unless somehow it's proved that he's been lying. Because I think people will eventually step back, take a look at it and say, he was a victim of a very cruel hoax here. What was perpetrated on him is almost unimaginably evil. And if he does, and if people believe that he's the victim, the little lies, the little, dissembling that he did to save face because he was embarrassed,
doesn't matter.
Whatever the case may be, doesn't matter.
Interesting. Jeremy Schaap, appreciate it. Thank you very much for being with us. Appreciate it. It's been just over a week since Deadspin.com exposed the hoax and broke the story. He joins me now. Tim, what's your reaction to what you heard today in that interview with Katie Couric? Anything surprising?
Well, honestly, knowing that Katie Couric and Manti Te'o share the same publicist, we mostly didn't expect her to ask any really tough questions, and as a matter of fact, she did. But when she came out and asked him point blank, when you were in Los Angeles, why didn't you go visit her in the hospital? We got a very revealing answer, and that was probably the most surprising part of the interview for me.
Do you still have questions in your mind? I mean, are there still questions that you think need to be answered?
Well, Anderson, I think that given, and I would echo what Jeremy said about that as a reporter, it's difficult for us to be put in a position of believing or not. All that we can do is look for facts. And we've already sort of seen some discrepancies here in regard to the phone records. The phone records that were presented to Jeremy after their ESPN interview are not characterized the same way as Katie Couric has suggested the ones that were provided to her were. But for the most part, I think that we are talking about a hoax and who's responsible, when in reality there are three hoaxes. There's the hoax that Lene Kekua ever existed. There's the hoax that she faked her death to hide from drug dealers, both of which were bought at some point by Manti Te'o. But the third hoax is really about the degree of the relationship and how serious and how much he loved her.
And that's something you think he played up, or it seems like he played up in the media?
When he essentially tells Katie Couric that he didn't go visit his sick, dying girlfriend in the hospital because he didn't want to miss a flight, that tells me that it's not really as serious as he allowed the media to promulgate that message in the days after she died, and in the way that he characterized it himself in interviews and in the press throughout this college football season.
I want to play one of the hoax voicemails that the fictitious girlfriend left for Te'o. Let's listen.
I'm just letting you know you saw me here, and I'm getting ready for my first session, and I just want to call you, keep you connected, and miss you, I love you. Bye.
Now, Renaya Tuiasosopo's lawyer says it was his client, Renaya, this guy, pretending to be a woman on these voicemails and on all the phone conversations, and that he was the only one. Do you believe that?
Frankly, Anderson, we find that kind of ridiculous. We have plenty of recordings of Renaya Tuiasosopo's voice. They don't match up from what we have in the voicemails. Furthermore, we too have had multiple sources tell us that there were Confederates that were involved along with Renaya Tuiasosopo in executing this hoax. So we really sort of have to ask the question, why is he trying to take credit for all of it now? Is he taking the fall for somebody who has more to lose than he does at this point? Or, it's been more than a week now since we published our story at Deadspin.com. Has somebody gotten to him and and tried to tidy things up? And it's really tough to say, but it's really sort of ludicrous to think that he was behind the voice this entire time.
And Tim, as far as you're concerned, do you think the story is over, or do you think there's another shoe to drop?
Wow, I mean, given that I don't really believe we're ever going to have the whole truth about this, there may be plenty of shoes to drop. But I think that for the most part, if Manti can sort of ever, I guess, acknowledge that the state of his relationship wasn't what he allowed the press to sort of maintain that it was, and that he knowingly didn't correct the media when they presented their relationship as something more than it was, I think that would probably put to bed all of the sort of questions that we have about the situation.
Fascinating stuff. Tim, appreciate you being with us. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Up next, North Korea threatens all-out action, and their sworn enemy, the United States, will explain why ahead.
Imagine facing the day with less chronic osteoarthritis pain. Imagine living your life with less chronic low back pain. Imagine you with less pain. Cymbalta can help. Cymbalta is FDA approved to manage chronic musculoskeletal pain. One non-narcotic pill a day, every day, can help reduce this pain. Tell your doctor right away if your mood worsens, you have unusual changes in mood or behavior, or thoughts of suicide. Antidepressants can increase these in children, teens, and young adults. Cymbalta is not for children under 18. People taking MAOIs, linezolid, or thiouridazine, or with uncontrolled glaucoma should not take Cymbalta. Taking it with NSAID pain relievers, aspirin, or blood thinners may increase bleeding risk. Severe liver problems, some fatal, were reported. Signs include abdominal pain and yellowing skin or eyes. Tell your doctor about all your medicines, including those for migraine. And while on Cymbalta, call right away if you have high fever, confusion, and stiff muscles, or serious allergic skin reactions like blisters, peeling rash, hives, or mouth sores, to address possible life-threatening conditions. Talk about your alcohol use, liver disease, and before you reduce or stop Cymbalta. Dizziness or fainting may occur upon standing. Ask your doctor about Cymbalta. Imagine you with less pain. Cymbalta can help. Go to Cymbalta.com to learn about a free trial offer.
To the best vacation spot on Earth.
It doesn't matter which of our great states folks visit. Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana,
Or Florida. They're gonna love it.
Shaul, your Alabama hospitality is incredible. Thanks, Garrett. Love your Mississippi outdoors.
I vote for your Florida beaches, Dawn.
Phil,
ride, go fishing, or just lay in the sun. We've got coastline to explore and wildlife to photograph. And there's world-class dining with our world-famous seafood. So for a great vacation this year, come to the Gulf.
It's all fabulous, but I give Florida the edge.
Right after Mississippi. You mean Alabama. Say Louisiana, where there's no dessert.
This invitation is brought to you by BP and all of us who call the Gulf home.
End your long week with a weekend getaway. Save up to 40% on all weekend hotel stays. Book by January 31st at HiltonAnyWeekend.com.
The latest on other stories we're following tonight. Aisha's here with the 360 Bullet. Aisha.
And so North Korea says it's planning a new nuclear test and more long-range rocket launches and will target the United States in an upcoming, quote, all-out action. That's according to the National Defense Commission. Defense Secretary Leon Panetta says the government is concerned by North Korea's continuing provocative behavior and that the United States is ready to deal with it. The U.S. State Department issued a warning today advising Americans not to travel to Benghazi, Libya. It says there's a significant potential for violence and kidnappings after last week's hostage crisis in neighboring Algeria. Apple stock fell more than 12% today despite a record quarterly profit announcement yesterday. Apple shares have been on the decline for months. Investors are concerned about the company's prospects for growth. And Anderson, it is cold all over. Take a look at these chimps at a sanctuary in Wales. They're wrapping themselves up in blankets and drinking hot tea to keep warm. Don't you think E.T. when you see that?
No, it actually reminds me of me on the day of inauguration when we were all really cold and wrapped in those blankets.
I say the chimps are way cuter.
Oh, words
Not
hurt,
that you
Aisha.
No, not that you aren't cute.
Yeah, whatever.
Okay, whatever.
Coming up, multiple lawsuits over an inch of a sandwich. The ridiculous is next.
Eloquence number 8, waking the baby. Robitussin liquid formula soothes your throat on contact, and the active ingredient relieves your cough. Robitussin, don't suffer the consequences.
My friends are all afraid. My friends, they do surround me. I hope this never ends, and we'll be the best of friends.
All set? All set.
Introducing the reimagined 2013 Chevrolet Traverse with spacious seating for up to 8. Imagine that.
What's it take to make America run? Lots of hard-working Americans creating the fuels for nearly 250 million vehicles at the world's most advanced refineries. About 170,000 miles of secure pipelines many of us never see. It's the world's largest energy infrastructure. Billions of investments in America, safely providing the fuels we need to power businesses, heat our homes, and keep America on the move. Log on to learn more.
And now, the hard part. Piers Morgan talks guns, your money, and getting anything done with Frank Rich and Newt Gingrich. Next, live on CNN.
As an energy industry worker in Salina, Texas, Chad Dean is part of something big. A town on the rise. It's a success story he's working hard to protect by adhering to strict safety and environmental guidelines, by making sure the oil and natural gas wells are encased in multiple layers of steel and cement. Because Salina is more than just a job site for Chad. It's home. Hear the stories of other Shell Energy towns at energyfromshale.org.
Imagine living here. It's possible that you enter the Boys and Girls Clubs of Metro Denver Dream House Route. This unique 5-bedroom, 5-bath Cherry Creek home is valued at $3.2 million. Plus, there are over 300 additional prizes. And the earlier you enter, the more chances you have to win. Visit MileHighRaffle.com or call 888-506-6053 to get your ticket for the Denver Dream House Raffle.
Life in America, a Solar Battle Prize report, CNN Sunday night, 8 Eastern.
Yes, time for the ridiculous. And tonight we are tackling the obsessive sandwich measuring that is sweeping the world. Now, it all started when an Australian teenager posted a picture on Facebook of his Subway footlong that was only 11 inches. The picture went viral. Subway Australia responded like this, and I quote, "With regards to the size of the bread and calling it a footlong, Subway footlong is a registered trademark as a descriptive name for the subs sold in Subway restaurants and not intended to be a measurement of length. Well, that certainly clears it up, doesn't it? Also, the Black Forest ham doesn't actually come from a black forest, and the buffalo chicken contains no actual buffalo. Little known fact. Anyway, people the world over have started measuring their footlongs and posting pictures online, and wouldn't you know it, there are already 2 lawsuits in the works. One in New Jersey, one in Illinois, seeking more than $5 million in damages. $5 million footlong just doesn't have the same ring to it. $5 million seems like a lot when we're talking about one bite of a sandwich. Now here's a lawyer for the New Jersey plaintiffs on Good Morning America.
People may say this case is only about 1 inch and that it may be frivolous, but companies should deliver what they promise.
I don't even think Subway delivers. I don't know what he's talking about. Here's Subway's head baker.
If they're following the baking procedures, they should get this 12 inches out of the oven every single time.
So GMA did its own investigation, buying 6 Subway footlongs at a different location. Here's how that went.
All 6 footlongs were in fact 12 inches long. One of them, the meatball sub, was actually a tad longer than 12 inches.
I love investigative journalism. So Subway hasn't commented on the lawsuits, but it did release a statement today promising that it really does want to give you all 12 inches. And I quote, "We have redoubled our efforts to ensure consistency and correct length in every sandwich we serve. Our commitment remains steadfast to ensure that every Subway footlong sandwich is 12 inches at each location worldwide." That's good enough for me. Now, can we just cool it with measuring our footlongs and posting pictures online? I mean, what's an inch here and there? You heard the man. The meatball was even longer than 12 inches. Although without perfect consistency, some unforeseen trouble can arise, just as ABC's Bill Weir.
When I'm doing carpentry, I use a sub sandwich as my ruler. This explains why nothing in my house is square.
Sometimes you get 13 inches, sometimes you get 11. That, after all, is life on the ridiculous. That does it for us. We'll see you again exactly 1 hour from now, 10 p.m. Eastern. Piers Morgan Tonight starts now.
Tonight, guns in America.
These massacres don't seem to stop.
Democrats take direct aim at assault weapons.
We should be outraged by how easy it is for perpetrators of these horrific crimes to obtain powerful military-style weapons.
Will the sweeping new bill make America safer? I'll talk to lawmakers backing it. Plus, Newt Gingrich on defending the Second Amendment and Obama's bold agenda. Also, introducing the gun girls. Live from the shooting range, why these young women want their AR-15s. And New Mexico shooting that shocked the nation. My emotional interview with the uncle of the New Mexico boy charged with killing 5 members of his family and allegedly planning an attack on Walmart. Plus, do you believe it?
What I went through was real.
Manti Te'o speaks. I'll ask football legend John Elway what he thinks about it and the big game in New Orleans. This is Piers Morgan Tonight. Tonight, now ground zero, the growing battle over guns, saying enough is enough. Senator Dianne Feinstein introduced a tough new bill to ban more than 150 types of firearms, including assault rifles and semi-automatic weapons. She also wants to make it legal magazines that hold more than 10 rounds of ammunition.
Columbine, Virginia Tech, Aurora, Tucson, Oak Creek. The common thread in these shootings is each gunman used a semi-automatic assault weapon or large capacity ammunition magazine.
The NRA is, of course, fighting back, saying in a statement, Senator Feinstein has been trying to ban guns from law-abiding citizens for decades. The American people know that gun bans do not work, and we are confident Congress will reject Senator Feinstein's wrong-headed approach. Well, with me now, New York Congresswoman Karen McCarthy, whose husband was killed in a mass shooting on a train in 1993. She's pushing a similar gun control bill in the House, and also with me, Philadelphia Mayor Michael Nutter. Welcome to you both. Karen McCarthy, when I heard Dianne Feinstein today, very personal, very emotional, reliving one of the horrific things that she herself went through, as indeed you did. Here's what I don't get. I don't get why, within minutes really of this assault weapons ban being proposed, already we start to hear it may be impossible to get it through the Senate, through the House, and the main reason may be Democrats. Democrats who are too worried about their own skins and their own backyards and their own political careers to do what they probably believe would be the right thing for their country. What do you do to change their minds and therefore the chances of success of this attempt to change the law?
Here's what you have to understand. After these horrific shootings that we go through, what the NRA does is already start to put out all the negative stuff. And then the members, to be very honest with you, start getting nervous about it. What we're trying to do is reach out to the American people, because I have to say the response from all the years of these kind of shootings and then what happened in Newtown, that was finally what America said, enough is enough. Listen, I know it's very tough, but the NRA is not helping us at all, mainly because they're saying we're taking away their guns. We're not. They have a Second Amendment right, that's what the right is, but the Supreme Court also said we have a right to do legislation to protect our citizens, and that's what we're doing. But they're putting out so many negative things. They're putting out lies, to be very honest with you. We have facts and figures that we can save lives, and everybody wants to say it can't be done. You know what? They said that also in '94. So this is something we can do. The President of the United States is behind us. He's going to work across this country. But the American people also are certainly gearing up for this. And by the way, we just had a hearing yesterday, and we had hunters, we had sports people, and they're basically saying they go hunting, they do go out and have sports with guns. They don't need assault weapons. They don't know why anybody else
Well,
needs
I keep asking that same question of everybody that comes on my show. Why does anybody need one of these assault weapons? I mean, Mayor Nutter, you came on my show, you took part in a very lively debate we had that night. I've not heard a good reason. The only reason I've heard anyone needs one is they're the Ferrari of weapons. How do you get through to the debate, to the American people, in a way that takes on the NRA effectively, that actually challenges their continued lie? And that's what it is, that anyone that tries to bring in any ban on assault weapons wants all the guns, because that is not the debate. Today, Dianne Feinstein made it clear 2,200 weapons and guns will still be left in circulation. How many more times do people need?
Well, Piers, I have to tell you, and Representative McCarthy, thank you so much for your leadership. I leaned over to your colleague, Representative Esty, and said, I didn't realize that there were so many different types of guns or weapons in the first place. I mean, no one has ever been able to truly answer the question, Piers, as to why a civilian, why virtually anyone needs one of those kinds of weapons. And so, I mean, the lies, the misdirection, the intimidation, you know, it's time for all of us in elective office, might want to pick up a copy of John Kennedy's Profiles in Courage and do what's right. If you do the right thing, everything else usually works out.
Carolyn McCarthy, I've got an interview coming up with two young women who wrote a piece in which they said they wanted the right to have an AR-15 military-style assault weapon at home because they feared that they would be attacked, and they wanted a gun that would guarantee they would murder or would kill their attacker. Well, how do you respond to that particular argument, which is they believe under their Second Amendment right they should be allowed an AR-15?
I will tell you, if you talk to professional hunters and certainly sportsmen, they'll tell you that's probably not the kind of gun to use. A rifle is more accurate. It's certainly easier for a woman to be able to do that. So again, these myths and the advertisement that goes out on this, it's totally wrong. It truly is wrong. But listen, there are a lot of good NRA members out there. A lot of times we're dealing with the far right on the NRA. But what people have to understand, and this is what the American people are now facing in their heart of hearts, why do we need to have these when they're slaughtering our children? And by the way, not just these mass killings, but the killings that are going on every single day. We can do legislation to help, certainly, the American people to live in a safer country. I'm a nurse. I've always been a nurse, even in Congress. And I will say to you, I could not save every single patient. I cannot save every single person from gun violence. But by gosh, I'm going to do everything I can to cut down the amount of killings and those that are injured and stay injured for the rest of their life, like my son. You know, this is a life-changing event for people, and they have to understand that.
Let me ask just very, very quickly, Maldonado. Do you believe that you can win this argument and get an assault weapons ban reinstated?
Yes, I believe in the American public. Americans are very, very smart. They're going to cut through a lot of this nonsense that's going on out here. They're going to let their voices be heard through their members of Congress, through mayors, through governors, through their legislatures. They've had enough, and we are going to be successful and do something very positive here in our country.
Good to hear. Michael Nutter and Karen McCarthy, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now let's turn to last weekend's mass shooting tragedy in Albuquerque, New Mexico. 15-year-old Nehemiah Griego allegedly used 2 rifles to kill his mother, his father, and 3 of his siblings. The family owned guns, and many people had them to protect themselves. Nobody could imagine this would happen, but it did. Nehemiah's uncle, Eric Griego, joins me so we can learn more about what happened, why it happened, and how this young boy did what police say he did. Eric, thank you so much for joining me. It's been an awful week for you, for the remaining members of your family. I can't imagine anything worse, and I extend to you at the very top of this interview my very deepest and sincere condolences.
Thank you. I mean, the services are tomorrow, and the family hasn't really even had a chance to get some closure on this. But unfortunately, we've had to sort of get involved in the conversation. It's been so one-sided. We knew this young man, and we knew a lot about him. He was a pretty much an average kid. I mean, above average in music and in some athletics, but he. None of us, the congregation, the huge congregation, his family, his extended family, a large family, saw any sign that he could remotely be possible in this. He had no criminal record. He had no interaction with the social service system. He'd never, to our knowledge, shot an animal or abused an animal.
Just to clarify exactly what happened, for those viewers who have not followed us as closely as I've been following this, Nehemiah was 15 years old and he killed your brother Greg, Greg's wife Sarah, and 3 of their children. There were 5 other siblings, I believe, who weren't there at the time. He used a .22 rifle and also to kill his father, we believe, an AR-15 rifle. But as you say, there was nothing that people can point to which showed any sign of mental disorder or any kind of obsession with guns. The only thing that I have read and gleaned from this, which could have triggered anything, is that apparently he was pretty obsessed with playing violent video games. You know him a lot better than I do. Do you think that could have played any part in causing him to suddenly go off like this?
But we have no idea. We do know that his parents, my brother and his wife, did not allow those kind of games, as far as we know. I never saw him play the games. Could he have done it on the side or clandestinely or with friends? I think it's entirely possible. Could it be the only motivation? We have no idea. Did he have a psychotic breakdown? Did the statement about Walmart, which is at the end of one of these video games, really just, is it his reference to a game as opposed to something he was actually going to do? We don't know. And the fact is, Piers, the media is not even trying to get to
right.
that.
And just to clarify that point again, Eric, the reference to Walmart is that the police claim that they were told by Nehemiah when they arrested him that he had intended to, after killing his family members, go off, commit a mass shooting at the local Walmart.
Yeah, that's as far as we know, as far as we've been told and briefed by the investigators, that's the only thing is that he said it. He said a lot of things. Apparently he was not in a great state of mind, and so for them to say that because he said it, therefore it must have been actually in the works, and for it to now be an international headline that his next victims were at Walmart, which sadly is what the local media is saying and picked up by the international media. So there's just a whole lot of recklessness being put out there by the other side, by the prosecutors and really the sheriff.
Can I ask you this, Eric? Did Nehemiah, to your knowledge, did he ever use any of the guns that were in the house? And do you know if they were, as a matter of course, locked up safely? Because there is this big issue, if you have weapons like an AR-15 and so on, you've got to lock them away so the children of that age can't get access. So did you have any information about that?
This is a semi-rural area outside of Albuquerque. Not many neighbors close around. My brother had dedicated the last 25 years of his life to try to get people who were in trouble or under addiction to turn their lives around. And by the nature of his work, there were people who were unseemly. And so he worried for the welfare of his family. The way he chose to deal with it was he thought his oldest son should be, essentially, when he wasn't around, as this night, that this terrible thing happened, that he should be able to know how to shoot the weapon and know how to protect his family. That's what he thought. I don't think he or any reasonable human being would have ever thought that his son, who he entrusted to sort of protect the family, would turn the gun on the family. So whether they were locked up or not, Piers, my brother had entrusted him to protect the family if need be.
Listen, I certainly don't want to lead you into any area that I know that you feel uncomfortable for reasons I completely respect talking about. I think it raises a number of issues, this, and you know, the biggest concern for you and your family is not that. It's be how you rebuild the lives of those who've been left and how you try and come to terms with what Nehemiah has done. At the end, he's a very young man. He's 15 years old. As you said, I've seen other interviews with you where you just say there was no sign of this. There was no warning bell that he could ever have done such an atrocity. And I greatly appreciate you taking the time to come on the show tonight. And again, my deepest condolences to you and all your family and the friends of everyone involved who lost their lives.
Thank you, Piers.
Coming next, Newt Gingrich joins us to talk about guns in America, and coming up later, introducing the Gun Girls. They are with us live from a shooting range.
Piers Morgan Tonight, brought to you by Jaguar. See the new model of your life at JaguarUSA.com.
Introducing instinctive all-wheel drive from Jaguar. Sometimes in business, you got to sharpen your focus. ADT Business Solutions is now Tyco Integrated Security, and we're the leader in business security, with world-class monitoring centers and thousands of qualified technicians. With a personal passion for helping you protect your business, we'll help create sharper, more powerful solutions customized just for you. We'll show you the future of security so you can focus on the future of your business. We are Tyco Integrated Security, and we are sharper.
Twins. I didn't see them coming. I have obligations, huge obligations, but obligations. I need to rethink the core of my portfolio. What I really need is sleep.
Introducing the iShares Core, building blocks for the heart of your portfolio. Find out why 9 out of 10 large professional investors choose iShares for their ETFs. iShares by BlackRock. Call 1-800-iShares for a prospectus, which includes investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses. Read and consider it carefully before investing. Risk includes possible loss of principal.
I don't make any decisions about who to hire without going to Angie's List first.
You'll find reviews on home repair to healthcare, written by people just like you.
With Angie's List, I know who to call, and I know the results will be fantastic.
Angie's List. Reviews you can trust.
Mom, I have the flu. I took Theraflu, but I still have this cough.
Truth is, Theraflu doesn't treat your cough.
What?
Alka-Seltzer Plus Severe Cold and Flu fights your worst flu symptoms plus that cough.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
That's the cold truth.
I have very good news, everybody. What's the good news? Silver Linings is nominated for 8 Academy Awards, including Best Picture of the Year. And for the first time in over 30 years, it's the only film nominated in all 4 acting categories. Silver Linings Playbook. Rated R. End your long week with a weekend getaway. Save up to 40% on all weekend hotel stays. Book by January 31st at BuiltInAnyWeekend.com.
This is CNN.
I was the one that found Supervisor Milk's body, and I was the one that put a finger in a bullet hole trying to get a pulse. Once you have been through one of these episodes, once you see that the crime scene is like,